All right, so here we are with the doomsday scenario of 269 electoral votes for the Democratic candidate and 269 electoral votes for the Republican candidate, presumably Donald Trump. And this is in the 2020 election, of course, and we're going to see possible scenarios where both candidates could end up getting the same amount of electoral votes, in which case it would go to the incoming House of Representatives, which will likely favor the Democrats in this election for a couple of reasons. Number one, the Democrats will probably take control of the House in 2018. And number two, they always do better in election years. I mean, if they take a majority in 2018, they can afford to lose a couple if it's a considerable majority. But the second point is about the fact that every single election year, Democrats almost always gain seats in the House of Representatives. It's usually Democrats gaining maybe a couple seats, but in a House of Representatives where it could be decided by 1 or 2 seats, 6 seats could land the Democrats in heavy favor of the American people and both the majority in the House. So the incoming House will definitely be extremely important for this election. I mean, it will decide the election, and of course the incoming Senate, which will also likely favor the Democrats. If you take a look at the 2020 Senate map, the Democrats have by far more possibilities of a pickup, and they'll probably hold on to a number of their seats in 2018. You know, they could afford to lose 1 or 2 and gain them back in 2020. Be just the Senate map in 2020 definitely favors the Democrats over Republicans, and that's not necessarily a good thing for Republicans for obvious reasons. But enough about that. We're not going to talk about what happens after. We're going to talk about what leads up into this type of election. So there's a few states that will never change. There are those solid Republican states that will never change their identity in the immediate future. You know, we might see it happen in a state like Texas, but we won't see it happen in a state right above it, the state of Oklahoma. Or we won't see it in my home state of Maryland, but we might see it in a state like Pennsylvania. You never know. And it pretty much really just goes to show how partisan voting has been. I mean, back in 1992, Bill Clinton almost flipped the state of Texas, where his opponent was from, and down in the state of Florida, where his opponent had heavy influence in. And these states were narrowly decided. Wyoming wasn't even a safe red state then. And now it's come to a point where the majority of our states have already been predetermined before the election, and we are landing down to a couple of swing states that are decided between a couple percentage points, which pretty much focus the candidates on certain states rather than others. In 1992, Bill Clinton, actually it's up on my wall here, you can't see it, but I have every election from 1992 to 2016 up. But Bill Clinton carried Montana. He carried pretty much up across Abe Lincoln. It's Abraham Lincoln. He carried Tennessee, he carried Kentucky. Definitely his running mate Al Gore helped that, but it was just the fact that he was able to win over here in the South, up in the North, up in the West, and even parts of the Midwest. You know, it really showed how partisan politics didn't really play a role, especially in the House elections. A number of these districts were decided by 5% or less, and now they're decided by 30% or more, and it's horrible, to be honest. We haven't really done well. I mean, we've gone way too far with partisan politics, and it's not going to be in the favor of the American people. But Texas, I don't know why I didn't fill that one in. That one's not part of this video. But there are certain states that probably won't flip in the immediate future. So that includes all the states that I've just filled in, and that leaves us with 163 electoral votes for the Republicans and 182 for the Democrats. Now, the first scenario would be if the Democrats were able to hold on to every state Hillary Clinton carried in 2016 except for one, and that one would be the state of New Hampshire, which would go to the GOP, and the GOP would carry the entire state of Maine. I'm starting off with the least realistic scenarios, but still realistic at the same time. I'm not going to go bizarre giving a state like Idaho to the Democrats just to get a tied scenario. I'm going to give you the actual scenarios that could actually end up being 269 to 269. So we start off with the state of Maine, probably out of reach for the Republicans to win all the congressional districts, but it is possible at this point, and especially with that statewide vote margin coming down drastically, it looks like it is somewhat possible. And the Republicans would have to sweep the Rust Belt, and that includes states like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Iowa, and the Democrats again holding on to every state Hillary Clinton carried except for 2 states, Maine and New Hampshire. So this scenario would pretty much be if the would pretty much be if the Democrats were able to hold on to their states and win a couple in the South. So the South isn't really turning more Democratic, but it is possible for Donald Trump to appeal to the Rust Belt while simultaneously lose the South. The South and the Rust Belt went as a whole in 2016, but they're sort of separating. The issues aren't the same. The fact of the the weight of jobs in the economy in the Rust Belt does not closely relate to the weight of things like healthcare or Social Security in the state of Florida. And a number of prominent issues down in the South don't really affect the North and vice versa. So we're not going to see a one-type Trump candidate where he can appeal to all these voters because he's in the White House right now and he's not necessarily making them all happy according to approval rating polls. So this would mean the Democrats would carry North Carolina, lose Georgia and Arizona, and as you can see, that puts them at 268. Where did the Republicans get that one electoral vote? Nebraska second. Now that puts them at 269, and of course, this ends with the Democrats carrying Florida. A lot of things have moved Florida in a more Democratic direction, but it isn't solid for either political party. But in this scenario, the Democrats get 269 electoral votes, 269 for the Republicans. The Democrats win North Carolina and Florida, while the Republicans win New Hampshire and Maine, and that puts us in a tied scenario. Now we're going to move on to the second one. So the second one's a tad bit more realistic. This gives the Democrats New Hampshire and something a little bit interesting, all of Maine. But they don't carry the state of North Carolina. That goes to the GOP, and right now we're at 276 for the Republicans, 262 for the Democrats. In this scenario, the Democrats carry back the state of Michigan, but lose the state of Colorado. The state of Michigan favors the president a little bit more than Colorado, so it's not so likely this scenario would happen, but it is possible. Colorado was more of a swing state in 2008 and 2012 than Michigan was, and that was something that drastically changed. A lot of pundits were saying, how did Trump lose Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico, Virginia, and carry Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania? We could see a scenario where Donald Trump carries Colorado and the Democrat carries Michigan, effectively tying the race 269 to 269. Here's our next scenario. So in our next scenario, the map pretty much changes a little bit. The Democrats lose Maine at large and Maine's 2nd district, putting them at 272. The Democrats hold on to Michigan. They still carry Florida. And instead of Colorado flipping, the state of Colorado lands in the Democratic column, but the state of Nevada flips. This one is definitely more of a more prominent realistic scenario. And Nevada is probably, if the Democrats nominate someone bad, Nevada will probably flip, in my opinion. Nevada has a higher approval rating than the Rust Belt does of the president, and he didn't even carry that state. Up in the state of Maine, we've seen a little bit more of a trend towards the GOP, but the Democrats are gaining a little bit traction in like special elections or in opinion polling. But nonetheless, Donald Trump was able to do what many Republicans couldn't for many years, and that's flip the 2nd district in Maine, and it is possible to win Maine at large for the Republicans. So, but this puts them at 269 to 269. Again, a very realistic scenario in this case. Here's one that's a little bit different. The Democrats would carry Wisconsin and Michigan, but they would lose Florida, and this puts the Republicans at 288. The Democrats would carry Maine's 1st district and Maine at large, putting them at 252. They carry the state of Nevada, which puts them at 258. Now, where can they expand their lead? Well, actually, where can they expand? The state of Arizona, which is the final state that puts it at 269 electoral votes to 269. The Democrats carrying the state of Arizona while losing the state of Pennsylvania. This is actually extremely possible because we've seen two special elections in both of these states, neither of which favored the GOP, but Arizona had a bit drastic more swing towards the Democrats than the state of Pennsylvania did, so it is mildly realistic. Now we're going on to probably one of our different type scenarios where parts of the Rust Belt go for the GOP and the rest doesn't. Arizona stays in the GOP column. The only state that's flipping in this scenario, state of Maine, and the state of Michigan, which puts, not the state of Michigan, the state of Florida, and the state of Michigan, but this puts them at 269 electoral votes to 269. So essentially what the Republicans did was carry Pennsylvania and Michigan, but lose Wisconsin. We saw the Wisconsin Supreme Court election, and you can pretty much make an argument for Democrats in any of the Rust Belt states, so which is why I'm saying in Wisconsin, Democrats will probably do a little bit well in midterms. Paul Ryan is retiring. They have the Supreme Court election that was on their side, giving a third liberal judge to the Supreme Court instead of only two. And the state of Michigan, probably would flip if Wisconsin flipped. But this is a scenario where it doesn't flip, and Pennsylvania probably won't flip unless the Democrats nominate someone good. Up in Maine, again, if the Democrats don't do well nominating a candidate, we could see Maine easily flip to the GOP. So the final and most realistic scenario would be the Democrats losing Florida. The Democrats lose Wisconsin, but they carry Michigan and they carry Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania and all of Maine. This puts them at 269 to 269. Now, the reason why this is most realistic is Donald Trump will probably carry most of the South, if not all of it, disregarding the state of Virginia. A part of the Rust Belt, Donald Trump has his most heaviest presence in the state of Wisconsin. It's a state that voted for him by the largest margin in 2016 amongst the Rust Belt states, amongst the Democratic Rust Belt states. I'm not including Ohio, Illinois, or Iowa, but Wisconsin. Donald Trump won by 22,000 votes, which was over a percentage point statewide, compared to less than a percentage point in Michigan and Pennsylvania. This is the most realistic scenario up in the north because the Democrats could win back with rural voters that are not so much approving of the president right now, compared to where Donald Trump is focusing a lot of his attention in a state like Michigan, where he was there the other day, or a state like Wisconsin, where he does like a jobs rally, something that could boost his numbers there. So the final map finishes off with the most realistic scenario, with the Democrats winning back the states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Maine's 2nd District, putting them at 269 to the Republicans' 269. Thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I'll see you all tomorrow.